We are back. We are happy to have the Chief of Police here, Richard Wells, and he has brought with us, he has brought us a PowerPoint presentation, and aside from maybe introducing you to some of our new members of the Warrant Committee, I think that's where we should begin. So, I don't know if you know Chuck Karimbakas.
Sure. How you doing?
I'll come around at the end before I leave.
Lee Michael McLean, Mike Mahalchik, Phil Matthews, I think you know, and Betty White, and Jean Eckner.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
And Julia Getman is our.
I heard you on the phone today. I know you. I said, who took Trish's place? And
Oh, yeah, because I was in his office.
he was in my office. He was yelling at me
okay.
in my office. No, he wasn't. I'm only kidding. Wow.
So, I think I can handle this.
So I'll talk for a sec before you can bring it up, and then I'll if you want, I'll just. First, I want to thank you all for allowing me to come before you. I listened quite a bit to your comments just on last night's meeting and the state of where the town is. I think this is my 8th budget as a chief, so I'm used to this. I became chief in 2007, and I think my first budget was '08. We had an override in '09, which at that time was 3-point-something million, which was the largest in history. So I'm familiar with that aspect of it. I worked on every override committee since the first one, when I was vice president of the police union, and I was actually chair of the last override committee for a day in the last one, too. The ethics commission ruled I couldn't be chair. And I did that partially because I worked for the police department now for 30 years. For most of my life, I feel like I was either trying to get this job, which was the days when Kevin Sorgi knew me, or a lot of times the past few years I was trying to keep this job. One or the other. It never seemed like there was a part in the middle, but I suppose that as I get closer to the end of your career, it's the people. You've seen so many different aspects of things in your life, and particularly in this profession, we often come on your worst day, not your best day, and we see a lot of the most open and virile things in society every day. And so I find myself being a strong advocate and passionate just in the things about the humanity in this community. I recently was privileged to speak before the MLK celebration in town this year, and I said to Rabbi Benjamin when he asked me, like, you sure want the police chief to speak at an MLK? Especially in light of all the things, Ferguson, a lot of the issues that have been, it's not easy to wear a police uniform today in the United States. And one of the things that I talked about is that as police chief, there are three words that are foremost to my mind every day, and they're present in every decision that the men and women who work for us make. And those 3 words are the sanctity of life, because that's really what we deal with as human life. And we can't make any guarantees, but our main mission as the most visible arm of government in this community, the one department that never sleeps, that goes all the time, is that we understand how important human life is, whether it's a 1-day-old baby or a 90-year-old person who dies alone, tomorrow or tonight or whatever. Just so in that aspect, so I've become very heartfelt and outspoken in that aspect. And Ted and some of the members who've been here, the veteran members of the thankless job being on the Warrant Committee, because it's really not fit for anyone to be out tonight. You guys are here on your own time, which is just I've become very outspoken in that aspect of it, and you'll probably see that from me in my presentation tonight. So I put together just a little PowerPoint of just the state of things that go on in this community every day. Some are seen, some aren't seen. We are a very unique community in that it is very rare to find a town that has a quality of life similar to ours that abuts the metropolis of the Commonwealth, which is the city of Boston. We are the largest neighbor. We border almost 9 miles of the city of Boston. There is no other, not Cambridge, not Chelsea, not Dedham, none of them abut as much of that city as we do. None of them are impacted just in the commuter arena the way we are each and every day. So with that, I'm ready to begin whenever you can start on that first slide and.
Yeah.
You want to bring the one up?
That was the
So you can just see if you're going to hit that first one right there. And I felt that it was pretty easy to begin with sign of the community we live in. And one of the things that I say often is the policing in Milton requires a constant attention to our residents and a significant effort to ensure adequate public safety and a positive quality of life. And just as you've dealt with every other department that comes in and has come through the door here this year, that's a constant battle for us every day. It's been no more evident than just the past 3 weeks and what we've been dealing with in the state of just what Mother Nature has dealt us and the day-to-day hardships and hurdles that is putting for us just to police this community is making it that much more difficult. Okay. One of the questions that Richard had asked me was, what was the state of the fleet? So these are two of the newer cars that I took a picture of the other day just outside the back door. Two things that have taken a real beating is one is our fleet and the other is the building. Have really taken a serious beating from this weather. But as I stated, we're the busiest entity of town government. We yield over 30,000 phone calls annually. We don't sleep. And we manage and coordinate the response of 16,000 calls in this community. And that's everything. That's every fire, every EMS. That's calls into the Blue Hills Reservation. To whatever the location is, it goes through our communications. Next slide. Some of these I'll leave for you. You can kind of take home and just take a look. There's the staffing organization chart as of 2015. The red X's, those are things that were there when I became chief that are gone now. They're all gone. I never thought at the end of 8 years as chief I'd be trying to get back to where I was the day I became chief. But I guess I'll be happy if I can just get to that by the time I leave being chief. Next, and you can look at that a little more. These are some of the important factors, because there's really only one thing I'm going to highlight on tonight, and that's going to be personnel. But in 1992, which was the last time that the town really engaged in an in-depth management study of this community and the police department, we had a population of 25,000. We had 57 police officers. Today we have a population of 27,000 and it's continuing to grow. We have a police staffing level of 53, which only came through the help of this committee last year and a lot of work with particularly Mr. Hurley and the other members of the board. It was actually his idea that we did to get level up from 51 to 53 officers. And as I say, it was 56, I believe, when I began in 2007. What was it, Kevin, when you came on the job in this?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I'll have to count the heads in the picture that's in my
I think
basement.
it's in the
when I go
60s. I
home.
think you're going to find it's in the 60s. And it has not been that level at all since my 30 years in the job.
I think it was in the 60s, yeah.
Okay. So our workload, and I broke, this is the first three here, are just kind of a breakdown of just the day-to-day calls that we deal with all the time. Burglar alarms, suspicious activity, medical calls, larcenies, auto thefts, car thefts, things like that. And if you see, I just did like a three-picture window. I went back to 92. I did a year, 2013, and I did 2014. As you can see, we're very, very busy. The one category that's really gone down from 1992 to 2014 is auto theft, because the technology in cars today, all the computerization, things like a low jack, things like, it's just not, the risk versus the reward to steal a car. You're better off to rob a bank than, and I didn't even put bank robbers, we have more bank robbers than car thefts. The risk versus the reward, it's easier to rob a bank than to steal a car. So there's just a little bit of the workload of some of the things that we deal with every day, just on the normal calls and the type of volume that we deal with. Next. Some of the contemporary trends of crime, of law enforcement today. In 1992, there was no such thing as 911, the call out to Massachusetts. In fact, in Milton, we didn't receive 911 until 1995. Just last year and continuing this year, we logged 1,000 911 calls, both on hotline from your homes, and today in the growing age, multiple cellular calls. And I would say within the next 5 to 10 years, and this is a big trend in Europe already, some of you may have already done this, people are dumping their hotlines and just going exclusively cellular. One of the big core things we have to handle under 911 is every time someone dials 911, we have to go there by law. Whether you did it by mistake, whether you tell us in it, and that's about just 400 of those a year in town we deal with. The big thing that's coming in right here is Next Gen 911. This is going to be a big move for us. This will be finalized for our community in 2015. They're in the layout design plan of it facet of it right now, which will move us up to the newest generation of 911, which is deemed call if you can, text if you can't. One of the things that they've found is obviously in texting, there have been many instances, not locally, but regionally, but throughout the country, where someone gets involved in a situation, they can't call 911, but they're able to text someone to tell them where they're at. So the next gen 911 is going to actually let you text us a 911 call. It also is going to move all of these hardline calls, which come from your house, which go directly to us now. It's going to add the cellular calls, because part of the presidential mandate, which was passed by President Clinton, which created the 911 for the country, is that every 911 location, answering location, must be able to see within 50 feet of where that person on a cell phone is. It's not that exact right now. Milton's tough because the Blue Hills is a tough spot for us. But the secondary part of that is if you dial 911 on your cell phone, it goes to state police in Framingham, and then they triage it and transfer it to us. That creates, in serious crisis, that creates a big delay. Boston has already matriculated over, they take all their calls. We will be doing that as of 2015, which will be a big time saver because we do take so many cell calls today. Excellent. Identity theft. This is a growing trend of criminal activity in this country. In 1992, it didn't even exist. In 2013, there were over 50 cases. In 2014, we did over 60 cases. As Americans continue to rely on the internet, on the handheld device, I heard you talking about scanning using your phone to scan library books out. The more that we depend on that, the more that we depend on the internet, the greater the risk of you having your identity stolen. And for those of you who have ever had your identity stolen, in many cases it can be life-altering and it can affect you for years. So it's become a big thing. They take a lot of time and take a lot of effort and part of our offices. Some of the things that just society-wise that we deal with a great deal, and if you saw the election, the gubernatorial election, both the Attorney General and our new governor, Charlie Baker, talked a lot about the issues with mental illness and that the challenges that it faces for society, and a great deal for us in law enforcement, because we deal with a lot of mental illness cases each and every day. As I go forward, I'm going to talk a lot about the relationship with B.I. Deaconess Milton and how just mental illness has changed the face of that hospital, how they do business today. But there's also things like elders who face things. Alzheimer's is one of the growing diseases in this country, and Alzheimer's could actually cripple the healthcare industry as it stands today. And Alzheimer's to us creates risk because if you have someone on a night like tonight, one of the things we every year is Alzheimer's searches. Someone gets out of a house and gets lost. The risk of them losing their life just because they can't make that decision goes very high. So these are things, and hoarding is another one that really are on our radar all the time. In 1992, there was no such thing as school resource officers. Today, we staff 2 school resource officers. And you'll see as we get into safety in school populations in Milton, it's a very costly and manpower-intensive thing. Next slide. These are some of our frequent flyers. Curry, all the Milton High, Milton Academy, Cunningham Park, more for youth-related things, and B.I. Deaconess Hospital, which is a growing regional facility. Next slide. I'm going to touch on these, follow up on these. The hospital that has resided on Highland Street for 50 years is no longer the little sleepy community facility. The partnership and the merger with B.I. Deaconess Boston has now had this hospital grow and evolve into a very active regional medical center. If you notice, you may not notice the way I do, but if you notice the ambulances traveling through town each and every day, they're not just Fallon. They're Boston EMS, they're Randolph Fire, they're Avon Fire, the Canton Fire. They're now Fallon ambulances from Quincy. This is a very busy medical facility. Because of that, we have a very strong partnership. We just saw this growing. It kind of like came overnight because I don't think, Kevin, your wife's, I don't think 10 years ago they even had a security guard. Today sometimes
They're not allowed to do anything, Richard.
Yeah, I know. Which brings me to this number right here. Just in a 3-year study, we've had 757 responses to the emergency department of BID Hospital. Most of them involve things like assault of patients, narcotic cases, mental health, and often prolonged security situations. We've had officers signed in that hospital for as long as 48 hours without leaving. Because the difficulty in the mental health industry today, on mental health caregiving, is that trying to find a bed. And once a hospital like Deacon's Milcom makes the determination, particularly what we call in a Section 12, which is the Massachusetts General Law that allows you to hold someone against their will, they can't let them walk out the door. And often, many of these cases, they try to get out. Milton is not a secure facility, and that brings us in board a lot of time. Assaults, if you just go home and Google, put assaults, just type in like assaults on medical staff, ER staff. It's a very alarming rate, it's very high. And so we have developed a very strong relationship with BID Milton. Here's the big curveball that came to us just recently. None of us saw it coming, none of us expected it, was the sudden closure of Quincy City Hospital. That left Quincy as the largest city in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts without a hospital. Immediately, our questions were, what were the impacts to us? And this was a collegiate effort between the administration of the hospital, us, Quincy Police, Fallon, what was going to happen. Fallon was bringing 25 patients a day by ambulance to the Quincy City ER. One of the things, if you understand or work in the healthcare industry, now that it's closed, well, you're not going to go south with a patient. You're not going to go to South Shore Hospital. You're not going to go to Jewin Hospital. Milton hospitals receive 50% of the ambulance patients. The big impact to us is that Quincy is a city that has a much higher opiate use and a much higher mental health issue than we do in Milton. So that number of us being at the ER just climbs even higher. And this is you can see the dramatic shift in if you've been in the ER. I was just there, I think last Friday, or Thursday or Friday, and I think there were just 4 different security guards plus a Milton officer in the ER at one time, all dealing with different patients. It's just become a busy thing. It's so busy. The county actually came to us a year and a half ago and said, don't bring any more mental health cases to us unless they're from Dorchester. keep yours, we can't handle them here. Next big thing, and this is the big one for those of you who've been on this committee, you've heard me talk about this before. This is kind of a growing issue, is school safety and security. The safety and protection of the many school systems within Milton requires an inordinate amount of manpower, resources, and planning. And we have a very strong collaboration. The officer standing right here, this was an incident at Pierce Middle School a couple of years ago. That's Sergeant Jack Richmond. He's the primary trainer, and he is our permanent liaison to the schools for everything involving any type of school violence, workplace violence, training scenarios, training for staff, training for students, the statutory school lockdown drills. All of that is coordinated and facilitated, paid for by us, but done by Sergeant Richmond. Excellent. Just to give you a little collage, we think of the Milton Public Schools, but we may not have a social plaza in our community, but we have a myriad of institutions of learning and this is, I didn't even get into the kindergarten or lower. These are just grades 1 through 8, and then colleges like Curry and LaBarre. We are a very busy community during the day when schools are in session, and I have a breakdown. You go to the next slide, we'll give an actual breakdown. This is the enrolled student population for all the schools in Milton, grades 1 through 12, and then Curry. It's 11,380 and growing. Because of that, this group puts a lot of emphasis for us operationally to have a very structured response plan and a very well-oiled and well-trained school staff should the day happen that the lone wolf arrives in our community and go to the next slide. You don't have to go very far beyond CNN on any day of the week to see of what is referred to in law enforcement circles, termed very much by Attorney General Holder as the lone wolf, the individual who is considered a great threat to American society, the person who makes that decision on any given day, be it as it was in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, or Columbine, to enter a school of learning and attack either the staff or the student population. Sandy Hook was different in that, unlike Columbine and in the hundreds that have happened since Columbine in 1999, Sandy Hook was the first time that a perpetrator actually forced his way into a locked facility by defeating the locking system they had, and then targeted an elementary school versus either a high school or a school for education. I'm not sure the exact number, but between Sandy Hook and the opening of school in Massachusetts this year, there were 72 other school shootings in the United States. There were 150% increase just in the past year. We've invested a lot of dollars in changing the mindset of school administrators and site-harding those locations. If you've been to any of our schools, you're on camera from the time you walk in, not for us, for them, that we really need to make them understand that a person who's going to perpetrate a crime, just as took place in Denmark the other day, as happened in New York City, as France, London, everywhere else, is a person who's going to be the lone wolf, who have an ideology, be it a religious one or one caused by mental health or whatever it is, he or she is not going to have a hard time getting a hold of an assault weapon. It's just not going to. It's very easy to do. So the only two chances you have is A, your security in place, and B, the training of your staff. Because the individual who decides to orchestrate this is only intent on killing. So your best defense is to be able to limit that carnage, and that comes into the collective efforts of not just us. The police department has a responsibility for the public safety of the occupants and staff of that facility, but everyone who works there, from the people who work in the schools, the custodians, everyone. And this is something that is not going to go away in society. This is going to remain very high on the radar of every school administrator and every police chief in the United States. And as I say, I would not be doing my job without at least making you aware of this today, because this is something that we deal with each and every day. This is a continuous process that goes on all the time. Okay. I talked a little bit about just some of the crime issues that we deal with. Being the largest suburb in the city of Boston, we border 3 policing districts: District 11 in Dorchester, District 3 in Mattapan, and District 18 in Hyde Park. District 11 and District 3 being 2 of the busier districts. The criminal today is very mobile. They move a great deal. Because of this, it takes a lot of vigilance and effort on our part. We are an active participant daily with the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, also known as the BRIC. We share information. We track individuals. You're going to see a little bit here with some of the things that we follow. When we were identified in 2011 as one of the best places to live in the United States, it takes a lot of work and effort to keep that. 2014 is the 3rd year that Milton has been named one of the top 100 safest cities in America, and we actually rose 20. We went from like 92 to 52 or 50-something this year. So, and that's not just, I don't take the credit of that as chief, and I do give a lot of credit to the men and women here, but I give a lot of credit to the citizens, because one of the things that we are very active in here is developing partnerships with every neighborhood, with schools, with the business people, with people who pick up the phone and call us every day. That's a very important thing for us. We're very active in social media. I was very pleased when, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we broke 50,000 reads for a week, and we've been steadily averaging over 30,000 for some time now. And that shows that people are engaged and paying attention to what we do.
I like your Facebook page.
Yeah,
Thank you.
excellent.
Thanks.
And thanks to Frank for posting the links. on
Frank's very good, because we know that whatever we do post, if it's important, Frank's going to take it and share it even that much farther. So, and that's really our goal, because I talked a little about this in a Milton Times article. It saves a lot of time. Major events, you'd have to go back, either myself or Deputy King or one of the lieutenants, type out a press release. You have a press packet, send it out, you have all your lists. Now you know they're following you, so you put what needs to be on social media, and then they'll just call you with follow-up questions, what they need to ask about, and it just saves a lot of time. I mean, in major media news stream, they just want to get the 12, the 6, and the 11. So if it's anything close to those, they're going to hound you for that little snippet. So social media kind of helps us with that a great deal, and just as recently as the incident in East Milton Square, both us and Quincy came in a mutual aid to us. We were able to post both on Facebook and Twitter, and send out to news media right from there, right from the scene. It was pretty easy to do. These are the 2 big things that affect most residents. This is the thing that gets people the most upset, they feel the most violated about. Car breaks is one, house burglaries are the other. One of the reasons that Milton remains a very high priority target for house residential breaks is very simple. One, they're perpetrated mostly by individuals who are addicted to either opiates or heroin, and they need to commit crimes to support that drug habit. B is, and I steal the line from my father, who, God bless him, was chief 20 years ago and spent 43 years here, but he had a great saying. He said this to me when I was in high school, which was probably the last time prior to the late 1990s that heroin was even an issue in Massachusetts. It was almost, it wasn't even really around. It was oxycodone that brought back the whole heroin surge. Was that if you were a fisherman and you liked to trout fish, you're always going to go fishing in a stocked trout pond. And he would describe the residences of Milton as a stocked trout pond, in that back in those days he would say, you know, every house had a TV and this. Nowadays, every house has a flat screen, has laptops, has iPads, has jewelry, has cash. And those are the things they look for. People who perpetrate these crimes, they know that many of our homes are empty during the day. That both parties work home, both heads of house work at home, or working or out of the home. And that's when most of these happen. And they can be really, really cause a lot of fear and anxiety on the behalf of residents. It's an awful thing. Personal crimes are very, violating to the individual. But when someone comes home, and I say this especially when parents or children come home and they find that their bedroom's been ransacked, their drawers, all their personal things are just all over the place. It's a very violating thing, and this is something that takes a lot of effort from us and from the community. We've been, the one good thing about all the snow, crime, those types of crimes have kind of like dissipated for a while. We know it's only for a short time. We're much busy with other things right now, but we know that once it gets warmer, that these people are going to the opiate. Governor Baker just spoke about it again today. The opiate epidemic in Massachusetts is not going to go away, and as long as it exists, we as a community will be very much a priority target for these types of crimes. And you'll see as we go a couple slides further, they happen all over town. And the people that perpetrate them come from, I think we had like 18 communities a year ago, of the ones that we identified. Okay, thank you.
Well, the flip side of that is that your officers all now carry Narcan with them.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about that. There's a slide on that.
Sorry.
I think you can hit it again. I think you want to go right to... Okay, so these are some of the stats. 2011 and 12, we had 69 residential house breaks. In 2013, we had a big spike to 98. This year in 14, it came down to 76, although it did spike pretty good in December. And again, the category is regional. It requires a great deal of attention. All breaks have the initial patrol response, investigative hours, and many of them involve technical and forensic analysis, blood, hair, things that can get left behind. Surveillance, when you get information that it may be a crew that's working in your community, it's going to be a collaborative, collegiate effort. In the technical forensic world, there's no such thing as CSI. In Massachusetts, a DNA hit is going to take a minimum of a year. It may take 2 years. It's not going to end by 9:59 on the 9 o'clock CBS special. It just doesn't happen that way. So they say this is going to continue to maintain a lot of our time. Go ahead. You can go right through this one, and when you go home, you can kind of look. I gave a breakdown of this, all the different streets. This was like 98 breaks over 44 streets, and you can see there's no rhyme or reason. Sometimes people say, oh, you live near this. Doesn't matter. These perpetrators will go anywhere in town, and you can see that by just the layout. You can go right to the next one. Again, the reasons: drug addiction. The vast majority of our drug, like in the high 90%, are opiate or heroin, Percocet addicted. These are very addictive drugs. It's very sad on the opposite side of it, because we have young families here in this community who have children who are addicted to heroin and opiates. And the sad part about this is that once they stick that needle in their arm, not only the risk of an overdose, but they've altered the quality of their life, in many cases forever. And this is something not just that law, even though we have a new collaborative working on this, this isn't something that just that law enforcement has to address. This is something we as a society need to address, because a lot of these cases, when you hear, and I think I told a story recently about a mother that I had spoken to who told me about her daughter who is now addicted to heroin, I don't want to tell too much about it because I don't want to give away her identity, but if you knew the history and the background of this girl and her upbringing, went to the Milton Public Schools, all the things you would dream for their child, and then to see that what happened, where did this curve come in, that suddenly they're now sticking a needle in their arm every day. It's very sad, and it's something that whenever I talk to at the schools, I just recently spoke with the PS, the district attorney and I were fortunate a couple months ago to be invited by Superintendent Goldman to speak at the high school with Mr. Jett, and there's no bigger advocate for the kids in this community and high school than James is. But this is something that you have to keep on the front burner, because if you put it on the back burner and forget it, you could lose a whole generation. And there are communities around us that are affected by opiate and heroin abuse much worse than we are. Okay, next. These just, I gave you kind of a broke down about how these, if you get broken into, what are they going to do with them? Pawn shops are more and more available. And if you go to a pawn shop, it's not like the one you see on out in Vegas, the pawn shop.
Pawn Stars.
Pawn Stars, yeah. It's not like that. They are shady. They know, even though there are laws in place about IDing, that much of the stuff that's coming there and the individuals is coming from people who are stolen. There are pawn shop details in Boston, but it's pawn shops are the primary place. And things that are stolen today are pawned tonight. They're already gone. It's a very fast thing, because the heroin addict or the abuser just wants to get to that next high. They're just trying to get enough money to get the fix. It's not like they're trying to put away for a summer vacation for 2 weeks. They want to get the next time so they can put that needle in. Okay. And again, the economy, things like that, people need quick cash, as I said, and you can just go right to the next. A lot of these I put in, and you can read them a little bit later about things like stealing, prices of gold, other copper. I'll give you an example. It's just sold in that one right there. Here's a perfect example. The Henry's building has been closed now for, 20 years, boarded up. So some of you may know, the town is in the process of going through, this committee would definitely know, trying to demolish this building.
We don't know enough.
I know. Well, we didn't know enough because I didn't know this. So, from a policing perspective, our mission has been to kind of like, people hanging out, drinking, homeless people trying to come in, maybe sleep there. Never in our wildest dreams thinking that anything in that building had any value. Now, I've only gone in like just inside the door. He probably knows what I'm going to say. So we stopped 2 individuals, just FIOs, people we saw in the area in the past month. Took their info, this and that. Completely unbeknownst to us, once the bid went out for the demolition, there was 2 voltage, they took them out with 2 transformers that were in there.
Yeah.
Well, the copper that was in there
Yeah.
was worth $5,000. It's all gone,
Wow.
all gone. But we didn't know that. We had no idea. But in it talking with Joe Prondak, he kind of was able to kind of put 2 and 2 together. We actually grabbed 2 guys one day. They were at the gate. They were definitely scrappers. They were definitely about to go in there. They just didn't take that extra step to perpetrate the crime. But once the bid went out for the demolition, it kind of listed what they're going to do, and these guys know they know what it's worth, they know what's in there, and they went in and they got $5,000 in copper out of that building. And as I say, my whole view, or our view from a policing, was just the quality of life, to people hanging around, things like, never in to me, if that building comes down, if it came down yesterday, it couldn't be soon enough for me. I drove by at each store, I'm looking, going, did it go? I hear about a roof collapsed here, was it Henry's? And I don't say that, but it just, from a policing perspective, I just want to see us get beyond this. Let's just get it done, okay. I just figured I'd touch on it, because there was one that caught me by surprise. I had no idea. And again, as I said, once, a young man or woman, and in some cases, people, it's their whole lives, heroin use has seen such a dramatic increase. We had a young man who overdosed, I think it's been about a month now, behind Milton Food Mart, and he'd had his struggles for some time, struggling with heroin. There's a very strong, at the time, there was a really strong dose going around. I think Boston EMS had logged 37 OD transports in a week, on the same week that this young kid died. This needle right here is the very core of significant criminal activity in this town. This needle and heroin abuse was tied to the Hudson Street
murder that occurred in 2013, in which an individual from Jamaica Plain is currently under indictment and about to stand trial for first-degree murder. It's a big thing in this country, and sometimes people don't realize it, and if it doesn't touch you, you may not know about it. You know, if you never put your hand on a hot stove and burnt it, you'd never know that the stove was hot, and if you've never been touched by something like this, you probably don't realize it. But for us in this building and the men and women who work in this police department, this is something we deal with every day. Excellent. Again, this is not a unique problem to Milton. This is something we collaborate closely with other agencies, especially in identifying suspects and recovering stolen properties. A lot of the arrests we do make in crimes of these nature, we wind up getting other communities where they'll do crimes. And the most recent one, I think we had one in East Milton, one up off of Randolph Ave, and he had done several in Braintree as well. Okay. This is just a little break, and this is just, I gave this a little touch because just in these districts here, the three we touched, the 800 B&Es just in the year 2013, I didn't even look in 2014, it's probably just as high, if not higher. Okay, next. Before I get into domestic, I do want to touch on Narcan. We do, thanks to the district attorney and Deputy Chief King, all of our officers now carry Narcan. Those who are addicted know we carry it. In some cases, there are some who feel that they will even take a risk and walk a little bit farther out on using heroin because of the fact that they know that we might get there fast enough to save them if they do overdose. There have been cases where, in this town, where people have been saved by an individual who's with them when they shot up, who gave them a shot of Narcan. Because Narcan is just a nasal spray that we carry that can bring a person from unconsciousness back to consciousness. It's faster than a smelling salt in a person that fainted. But we carry that, and all of our people carry that. The difficulty is it's extremely sensitive to cold, so you have to keep it with you. We have to keep it in a warm cruiser. You can't leave it on the cruiser. It goes in and out at every shift. Because if you leave it out, if it's subject to extreme cold for even like a shift, it loses its capability. And again, this is something that we're being drawn on all the time.
No,
Not all the
I
question?
guess
Oh, you
we-
want to say it? You want to say it?
No,
Okay.
you answered that. I just wanted
Okay.
to know what Narcan.
Okay. Domestic violence, I always call it the hidden crime. You don't see a lot of it, but just from 2011 to 2014, there were 1,000 domestic-related responses by the Milton Police Department. These resulted in 104 arrests for individuals for either assault or other violent acts. You drive by the police station every day, and I'm a big advocate that the police station should look and have the appearance of being reflective of what this community is about. And one thing that happens in there almost every day that you probably don't even realize, court-mandated exchanges between parents who is a safe place where they allow them to take place. Next slide. Domestic violence, again, still remains one of the most dangerous calls for service. Domestic violence-related deaths ranked #1 for all murders in the Commonwealth, continuing this year. In 2014, with the assistance of the Executive Office of Public Safety, this happened late in 2014, they funded through DOVE, which is Domestic Violence Center out of Quincy, funded and assigned a DV liaison to the Milton Police Department. She splits her time. She runs her base from our station. She's assigned to us in Randolph. She splits her time between both communities. And she does follow-out and outreach to every victim of every domestic we have, which is a very important thing. The picture captured in the slide is one of the most, if not the most heinous in my 30 years, and this was the Revelis murder, triple murder that happened in 2009. And it was a classic, a violent case of domestic violence that rocked this whole community. And even myself as chief thought to myself that night, well, could this really happened here? But it does happen and continues. If you just look at, there's a very active ongoing case out in Middlesex County right now. They happen all the time. It's really significant. The Remy case was another one. Remy's kind of very high profile. Go ahead.
This is just, and I'm getting to the end here, major crimes, investigations, regional issues. And these are things in addition to normal operations, crime, calls for service. We're impacted by major issues that tax manpower and personnel. This was shortly after the Ferguson verdict. These were the protests in Boston. The first 3 offices right there, those are Milton Bicycle offices, which make part of a regional unit created by the Boston Police called COBRA. It's cops on bikes, regional assistance. They use quite a bit. But I talked to Ted a little about today. I heard a question last night about mutual aid. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about mutual aid and how it functions and how it pays and how it doesn't pay. And we can go right into the next one.
This is something we talk about, this is a new trend that we started tracking last year. One of the things that we've come to realize just through our intel and advances in technology is people will come and live here in Milton, but commit their crimes in Boston. And as you see from these, a lot of times they're serious crimes. And so we now track weekly every individual from Milton who was arrested by the Boston police and what the crime was and if there's any nexus to us. In many cases, they may not even be on our radar, and a lot of times there are. So it's something that we pay a lot of attention to here in Milton. Go ahead. This was just a this was last year. This was a triple fatal that had ties to Milton. There were 3 people killed in that. You can read it when you want to go home, but these are the types of things that really can tear at the fabric of a community. And as I say, we have no closer partner than our relationship with the Boston Police Department, the Boston Regional Intelligence Center. The chief of the department, Will Gross, lives here in town. The superintendent of patrol, Bernie O'Rourke, lives here. His son is actually on our job, and several other commanders. The new captain, District 3 in Mattapan, Haji Hussein, the first Muslim captain. We have a very close interaction. And this is another one you can look at. You know, the proliferation of guns, unfortunately, is too big in this country. And this was just a 24-month analysis we did in 11 and 12 on any gun-involved incident in the community, where we came across a gun, found a gun, someone used a gun, someone carried a gun, someone illegally hid a gun. Again, things that you won't see it all the time, you won't hear about them, but the proliferation of guns is something, you hear Commissioner Evans talk about it a great deal in the city, Mayor Walsh. We are not untouched by gun violence, and it's something that, again, remains on our radar. Go ahead. White-collar crimes, another one. You don't hear a lot about it. This is an active case, this first one. We have a very active white-collar case ongoing now with the Norfolk DA. This was a retired teacher who embezzled thousands of dollars from the school system. This took a significant and protracted investigation. Took over 6 months between our detectives and specialists who do forensic white-collar stuff from the DA's office. And I'm still not sure if they've been able to identify every dollar that was taken by that individual. But again, major cases. Not something when the young officer walks in the door as a new patrol officer ever thinks he or she is going to be working on at some point, but things that we do deal with. Go ahead. This is a big one. Sexual assault is really, and I took a quote here, it's difficult to estimate the numbers of people who have been sexually violated, because many don't. And I grew up in a house with a lot of brothers, but I'm a father of 2 daughters. My wife is a police officer in Cambridge, a lieutenant, who's done extensive work in her own professional career with both, not just DV, but sexual assault victims. And if you're the father of a daughter who's been involved in a sexual assault incident, it can be life-altering. And just since September, we've been involved in 6 sexual assault investigations here in town. Some of them were Curry, some of the Curry students. We've completed a very successful investigation, which sadly involved a teacher who was charged and subsequently pled to sufficient fact, was given 10 years of probation. I give that young girl a great deal of credit. She was a very courageous young woman to come forward as the lone victim in this case. One of the things that this investigation found going forward is that this was not the first girl, and there had been others going back farther that had similar stories, but she was the one who came forward. And to me, when we do sexual assault investigations, I consider these a high priority for us, and that when someone makes that call, that we do our best collectively to treat that case and give it its due process. They're very hard to move forward, not just from an investigative point of view, but also, as the DA would tell you, any DA would tell you, from a prosecution point of view. Okay, we're almost at the end here on the note. And these are just regional incidents. This is the most recent, this was a good sucker punch, I would call. We're not immune to major incidents. This was the January shutdown of '93 at 7:25 in the morning, where a group of individuals who we've been able to track go back to Occupy Boston, even all the way back. I believe this one right here goes all the way back to the DNC in 2005. They put together a plan with shutting down all three lanes, northbound on 93. It was a very well-identified target, because one of the things about being down there, we call it the hole, because it's 60-foot walls on each side, there's no breakdown lanes. Once they blocked it, there was no way out for all those in, and then they gridlocked all the way back to Rock on 93, and the effect on us was they gridlocked every street northbound into the city. The good thing is that we have been very good in developing relationships and collaboratives, just as we'll give to Boston when they have major events. These are just some of the agencies, and Canton's not up there, that were involved in this. This took about, we call it an all-hands-on-deck approach. This took every officer working that day, plus help from Quincy and Canton, and the state police in Boston, and as well as Boston Fire, who sent 25 firefighters out, their technical team that cut these barrels. These individuals took 3 barrels. They made some mistakes. Each barrel weighed about 1,200 pounds. They locked themselves inside it. They wore diapers because they knew they'd be there for a long time. The mistake they made was they should have let the cement set for a few days. So in the mason, it was what they call like green cement. It was soft. Once they started cutting through the outer, it was still soft on the inside, which made it a lot easier for them to cut through. But we realized, and going back all the way to when the DNC came to Boston, we realized that our proximity to the city and our relationship with Boston PD, in the fact that sadly we live in a world where there are individuals who will perpetrate, significant things. If you'd ever told me they were going to blow up the Boston Marathon, I would have said, yeah, right, but it happened. And so I quote a detective who died many years ago. His name was George Skinner, and he had a saying. He was an old school detective, and he used to say, big or small, we handle it all. I'd say that approach still exists today, but our preparedness and training for all type things of whether the small things or the big things has to be significant, because this is the world we live in today. The final thing, and I pulled this picture today, this is the original Hendry's. This is when I was a kid. My father worked right across the street. Betty remembers because her dad was a selectman.
I remember.
Those were the windows you could walk up and buy an ice cream, and life was a lot different. But one of the things that we look from a policing perspective, and one of the things that the police department, the selectman has asked me as police chief in the police department to identify, is that we realize that Milton is growing and the police department is not moving with it. We had 25,000 people in '92. We had 27,000 this time. What will we have at our next census in 2020? Boston anticipates they were at 618. They expect to be about 790,000 residents by 2020. That's how fast they are growing. So just some of the things that we look at strategically, some of the increase. Meg Lane is a 300 resident, high dense. I have a lot of concerns about this. One of the things about that in the Randolph Ave is it wasn't really built with a lot of homes on it. It had the dump. It had some woods. So you're going to put 90 units with 300 people. Where are they going to walk to? How are they going to go to school? How are they going to? You can't even put another set of lights there for the entrance because there's already a set of lights at Reed and Randolph. These are some of the things. Milton Hill just got 150 new residents. Hendry's will potentially have 75 new residents. Grant Avenue is now coming to put their headquarters, the MassDOT location. You have a new assisted living. Pulte Homes are going to develop 30 homes in a cluster zone up in that, which is all woods today. So these are things that are going to grow your population. Curry is growing, more dorms, always growing, always getting bigger. And all of these things just place more pressure on your police department. Go ahead. My number one priority for 2015 is very simple. I don't have a wish list. I don't think I asked for anything capital. Is we are understaffed. I've been saying this for some time. I began in 2007 with 57 officers, and today we have 53. And my priority for this year, and I know the dilemmas, I listened to your discussions today, but we need 2 more police officers yesterday. And this is a fight that I have to try and make. And I know that it starts here. I've already been to the personnel board to get them to approve it. I got the selectmen to approve it in my level service. And I'm here to argue for it today, and I'm prepared to take that to town meeting floor if I have to. And I know this is a difficult time, but when I walked into this room today, I talked to you about 3 words of sanctity of life, and that is something that's foremost in my mind. And with the number of officers we have today, it's not enough. It's just not enough. So that's pretty much it for my operational thing. I have one more slide, which I'll just end with, and I'm not even going to get into. If you want to ask me questions about the winter, this is, I call this the winter of our discontent, which is the quote from William Shakespeare. This has been a trying I don't know how many leaks we've got in communications. We had a flood in the basement already in the first one, which was about $10,000 damage. Thank God with Bill Ritchie Collective, we found the money and we fixed it. We may have to address 911 by the end of the day. I just don't know how big it's gonna, how bad it's gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be that bad, but I'm gonna do everything I can not to come for an RFT. I can tell you that I do not anticipate, I have not ever in my 7 years come for an RFT for overtime outside of what is allotted by the Warrant Committee. I do not intend to do that this year outside of what you've given to me. And that's pretty much it, and I'll gladly ask any questions that you have. You can follow up and email me any other questions. I know that your time is very trying, and I know that you have to make some very big decisions. I will say this to you, though. I'm not a numbers guy, but I take an interest in listening to how you discuss your approaches. You do have some great approaches. Although I liked your quote today, there is life outside of spreadsheets, Ted. That's where I live. I live outside of spreadsheets. We deal in human, sure, we deal, you just, all you have to do is come and spend one day in the police station today and just take some of the phone calls and emails that we take from people. Because people are upset. They're we've got 90 inches of snow on the ground, and it's not pretty, and it's not easy, and it's not gonna go away fast, and as residents, we're all in this collectively together, and the thing that I said is one day at a time, one street at a time, and we'll get this done. But for us, the priority is we still have to be able to function, respond to those calls as they continue to come in. So that's pretty
Okay.
much it from me.
I know a lot of people have questions, so we'll start with Kevin and go to Darnell.
Yeah, Richard, nice job, and as always. And I was wondering, do you have any idea how many cars travel through this town on a daily basis?
About 200,000.
200,000 a day.
I got a recent shock on that I didn't expect. I'll throw this back to you. DCR, I don't know if this came to, DCR, just before the Patrick administration went out, the DCR has an initiative they want to do. Part of it is to get that bike path across the Parkway to connect it with the section that's on Truman. But they want to redo that intersection. Some of you might live there might recall we did a temporary do not enter at Elliott in the Parkway for about 3 weeks. It was a complete, all the time. They want to redo that intersection, through that flow. Mattapan Bridge, so there's 6 bridges out of Boston, 5 come through Milton. I'm not going to ask you to name the bridges, but I'm going to give you that. Just the Mattapan Bridge, what does it carry a day? What's its volume? Anybody, take a guess. One bridge.
75,000.
You're close. You're close.
60.
60 is the number. 60,000. The highest anyone's said to me so far was 2,500. People thought like 1,000. I'm like, just go watch. So, but if you come through it, so if you travel on, you see once you get in here, it's just, and they want to redo the whole thing. And they realize too that, it's particularly in the Elliott Street corridor, the ones that do come up Elliott Street, like a high percentage of them go all the way over to Truman. They don't take the Parkway or 130. They're going to Truman over towards Dedham, Reedville. That yeah, you're. So they want to redo that, but I was like, that was a call for me, but it's about 200,000.
Yeah, wow.
It's a lot of. We are unique for a residential community who, like, if you sit in this building, you look out the front window, you look at the gazebo, on any given day, it's pretty, whether it's 60 inches of snow or a sunny day. But this is why we did well in the incident with the barrels, is that any hiccup on 93 North on any day has an effect in this town. And the thing that for me as chief is most frustrating, and Ted talked about, because I'm also chair of the traffic commission, is it's difficult in that the infrastructure of this community are homes that were built for 1, maybe 2 cars. The majority, not maybe like other 1 or 2 cars. And even like the parking lots for our schools and our church, a lot of our churches don't even have parking lots. They were not meant for anywhere near the influx of vehicles that are on our roads today. You only have to look at just look at the dilemmas. I look at the dilemmas that we're dealing with just in the elementary schools, pick up and drop off with the snow cover. Unbelievable. Glover School takes 3 cops plus 2 crossing guards just to handle that pickup drop off. We give St. Mary's of the Hills at A+ 2 weeks ago. They do an unbelievable job. It's the Catholic upbringing they have. I don't know what it is. They're but it's there. So
You know, it's just follow, in the past month, I've never been, or maybe I went to one planning board, I'd never been to ZBA. I've been to both the ZBA and the planning board on just the Falcone project and the impacts on the square. It's just, it's tough. Look at just the past week of taking away one lane on all your major, Elliott, Central, Adams, Granite, you took away one side of each, you cut them all down. You did it on all the streets, but look at the effect on the main roads. It's just, it's significant. So, it's a lot, Kevin. Traffic is a big thing for us. I didn't even touch on traffic, because I
Right.
could go all night just on traffic.
Oh,
Next
no.
question. It was like being in court.
No, we spoke about this often before, because I always look at the overtime, all right? And I look at overtime in another way. I look at it as overworked police officers with the number of hours we put in overtime. So I'm always an advocate for decreasing the number of hours and increasing our number of patrol people out there. If we do get to a situation where we do have a couple of extra patrol people, is that going to alleviate the number of hours of overtime that we're going to have these guys out there working? Because I always say, you don't want to run into an officer on his 16th hour of having to be out there, maybe a third day after, you know.
Here's how I can answer that. Is it gonna lower the number that I'm asking for on overtime? No, because if you look at what I asked for, it's nowhere near what I spend. What it may do is lower what I spend, because I give you an example. So now we're in like I see fire went for $100,000 Zircon transfer last night. But I take just like the day of this incident in the square, because I got 2 bodies last year. Those 2 bodies just made it that much easier for me not having to get extra overtime, because these, like this winter, I should be having to come for you for more money, but it's making it that much easier. But what it does do is, I steal from Peter to pay Paul, which bothers me, because the thing I steal from the most is training, and I don't like to do that, because your department is only as good as it's trained. And so, but our first priority is the answer calls for service, so that's what I do. It may lower the actual number, is like the 475 number, I don't think it's gonna lower the request.
I mean, man hours worked is really the overall stressor on the number of man hours worked. Because for me, like again, a tired police officer, okay, is not in the best interest of the town of Milton. And that's my opinion. And it's not saying it's just human nature.
I know.
Tired anybody. It's not no. And
How about a town warrant committee member?
well, trust me, that's not a pretty picture.
We don't carry.
But no, I'm saying, and that's
Speak for yourself.
that's anybody. And what I'm saying is, I think we do need more officers out there. We spoke about that. I talked about the fire. So we've gotten so used to having the minimum of minimums on all things, and we haven't addressed that. So we've been fortunate, and I always look at the Pickens situation. We've been very fortunate that we only have one long-term disability that we're dealing with. You have these guys working many, many hours, walk into a situation, they're tired, they miss something, they're hurt. And that bugs me. And
Well,
I think we want-
I don't, well, there was a question Richard asked me about this. I'm lucky, and knock on wood, I mean, anything can happen tomorrow,
yeah.
but I'm very lucky that I have a department that's really into, like, I watched them today, like, I haven't had a lot of disabilities, even though someone could get killed tomorrow, someone could get seriously hurt, like right now, as we say.
I mean, the town has been fortunate.
Right.
I mean, the town itself has been very fortunate.
But they're
Across
very
the
good
board.
today. They'll work on, but they're very good about taking care of themselves. Like, none of them smoke anymore. And when I came on the job, Simcoe's was like the nightly, now I see more salads and, like, the big joke is, people have been really gracious the past few weeks sending things. And someone sent 2 dozen donuts, and I laugh because you just don't see, I haven't had a donut in years. I don't remember the last time. You just don't see them eat. They have what's called Bagel Sunday, where the day shift on Sundays has bagels and burgers, but you just don't, so they're pretty good about, and this is on the training side, law enforcement training as a whole has been pretty good about pushing the hazards associated with the stresses of the job, like you say, the long hours, all those things, and not adding to it with things like smoking and your diet, things like that. And I give, you know, the young men and women, they really, the women especially, I'll tell you, I watch them, and we are a very diverse place. The most diverse place in this town. And it's funny, when I came here, two things go to answer to your question. So I'd only been appointed a week when a police officer was killed on Boers Parkway, and I hadn't even worked a shift yet. And it was really a sad case, because he was an MDC officer, and he was married to the first female officer in this job, and they'd only been married for 6 months. And he was in his altercation of all the Milton officer. Suspect got his gun, killed the MDC officer. The next officer on the scene was Chucky Paris, an officer, deputy, who had been shot himself at Turner's Pond a year before by an assailant. But I never forgot that. That's always kind of like those first few weeks of being in the, you just, you know, I understand the hazards of known police officers. I traveled to New York City to Detective Lou's funeral. I understand that, I say my wife, my oldest daughter was a Marine, is now a police officer. I understand my youngest brother Danny's a trooper. So I'm used to that police culture, but that's a pretty earth-shaking thing when that happens. It really is. It can, but they're very good. Let me say, I'm giving you a long answer to one. They're a lot smarter today than they were when I came on the job. They're good about taking care of themselves. Then, you know, they know on short days, don't go home and go to bed. Don't go out. They're pretty good about that. And I'll be honest with you. And I talked to him about the humanity part of it. To me, as chief, the greatest thing about being chief, the thing that I am the most proud of, is what I see them do. It's just, sometimes they'll drive me crazy. And sometimes they'll do things that make me want to rip my hair out. But for the most part, like, there was a picture that someone took yesterday of two cops. One, you don't even realize, one's a man, one's a woman, Matt Mercer, and Christine Feeney, pushing a car up a hill. They do things like that all the time. All the time. They go, when I say they go above and beyond, I can't say it enough.
I think we got a bunch, like I said, I
You
know
are.
a lot of the officers,
We
you know,
are
I
very
know a lot of
lucky.
them.
We're
And we got a bunch
lucky,
of great guys
you
on
know.
the force, and to me, the biggest threat is seeing one of these guys get hurt, and we not did everything we could to prevent it. And that's my opinion.
Yeah,
That's
so
my opinion.
I'd say to you, in the answer to that, because I'm really ready I've never asked for bodies. This has been my first time. Kathy Fagan said it to me. She says, you buckled your belt and you sucked this up and just, because I do believe it's like a team effort. But I'm at the point now where I know I'm not kidding anyone. You know, we deal with big city things sometimes. You know, Leroy Walker said it to me great. He said, you feel urban pressure and you guys do very well with it. But if you were to bring anyone in here today, be it Police Executive Research Foundation from DC, the IACP who did the 97, the 92 study, all of them would look at you and say, you've got to like. We don't even meet the national criteria as far as. And so I gave it to the selectmen in like a 5-year, to add 5 officers over 5 years. And you're going to see your population is going to continue to grow. And I worry, like going back to, I worry that how that's going to deal with more traffic, just more, what's going to be the impact on the schools, all those things. It's just, and again, schools, if I had my way, I'd never step foot in a school. But I know that's impossible. Absolutely impossible today. So I know I gave you a long answer to that, so. Next question.
Okay, well, Darnell brought up the subject of overtime, so we're going back there. In the year just finished, fiscal 14, you actually had $475,000 in overtime expense.
Actual overtime, right?
Actual overtime expense. And that was against a $313,000 appropriation. So how did you pull that off? What didn't you spend money on?
So,
So, I mean, I can tell you,
Oh,
because
go
it's
ahead.
right here.
go ahead, you can do it, go ahead.
It's, I mean, the major item was out of your personnel line.
Right,
Okay, you underexpended that by about $118,000.
right.
And, you know, this is, in a way, this is a similar situation with the fire department. For years, they had some vacancies, funded vacancies that they hadn't quite filled, and they were able to use some of that extra money from their personnel line for supplementing their overtime line. Now they finally are filled that vacancy. They can't supplement their overtime line with
Personnel line.
the
Right.
personnel line, and now they got a problem this year and next, and they're looking for a
RFTs.
right,
Right, over.
reserve fund transfer for this year, and then a greater increase for next year. So I'm wondering if that, I wasn't aware that you had a vacancy, so I'm not sure how that happened to your personnel line.
So that just happened. So I just had one officer leave, just now. It's only been like a month.
Oh, this is 14.
Oh, 14.
This is 14, you had your personnel line was 118,000.
In 14,
Yep.
115.
And actually, it was,
So it's possible, so here's, so it's.
actually,
it's-
it was about 200,000, actually, because
Yeah,
you
it's two
took
things.
75,000 out on a 3%,
Right,
and then you still had 118 unexpended.
right.
So that was the big question in my mind.
So the
was, how did that
difficulty
happen?
for me is, unlike, and I may have said this to you before, but I'll say it to him. So unlike Mary Gormley hires a teacher, I hire a police officer. So Mary hires a teacher. In August, the teacher's in the classroom in the first day of school. So I hire a police officer. So I am bound by three things: civil service, which I have to get a list from, a police academy, which is run on the state side, so they're dealing with their own shortfalls there, so you gotta get in line to get an academy. There's number two. Number three, which is the bigger part, which will never end, and is only going to grow, because I came on this job in 1984, the police academy was 11 weeks. The officer who comes here today, the police academy is 28 weeks. So, we just hired, what do we have, I think we had 4 graduate from the Boston Police Academy in July. Well, they were there for over 6 months, even though you funded that position